Hi, welcome to Flicks Minute. Today I will tell you about a romantic comedy movie called You, Me, and Dupri. I hope you like it. The movie starts on a beautiful beach where we see a young couple chatting happily. Carl the architect and Molly the elementary school teacher. They will get married at that location, and currently they are preparing everything. One of Carl's best friends, Neil, frantically reported that Dupri had arrived at the wrong location, but they still picked him up though. Dupri is also Carl's best friend. He works as a security guard, and he is the only unmarried person among the three friends. He intends to attend Carl's wedding now. Mr. Thompson, Molly's father, who is also Carl's boss, is busy doing the wedding decorations. He wanted a perfect party for his beloved daughter, even though Molly didn't expect that from him. The next day at the rehearsal dinner, Mr. Thompson jokingly accused Carl of trying to take his company by marrying his daughter, making Dupri and all the invited guests laugh at this. When the excitement reaches its peak, Dupri intends to present his acrobatic move, which he calls the Flaming Tornado, a stunt he has done with Carl since they were in high school, and tonight he will do it. But once he gets into position, Carl leaves him for Molly, prompting Dupri to call off the act and leave. Neil decides to replace him, and he meets with disaster there, as Dupri realizes things have changed. He goes to the beach to entertain himself and is immediately approached by Carl. Dupri understands that this is where the road ends for him and his best friend Carl, but he is proud of their adventure. As Carl's best man, Dupri apologizes for laughing at him in a Mr. Thompson joke that he now finds unfunny. However, Carl admitted that it didn't matter since he knew that his father-in-law had a weird sense of humor. He gives Dupri a flask as a gift for being his best man, creating a touching moment for him. But this wouldn't be the last of him, as Dupri wanted a lightning bolt symbol on the lapel of his best man suit, and Carl agreed. In the morning, everyone cheers at the couple's wedding party where Dupri looks happy for them, including Mr. Thompson. Can you see it? He got what he wanted. There we go, best man suit with a lightning bolt symbol. After their wedding feast was over, the young couple returned to their home in Overton and began the first day by setting up the answering machine. The next day, Carl went to work at Thompson's company, where he was surprised to find out that the boss had enlarged the development project he proposed. As a result, now the boss is overwhelmed with managing everything, so he entrusts the project to Carl, positioning him as the lead designer. Carl immediately told his wife about his promotion, including that his new office had a view of trees behind the windows. This is a dream come true for him. Molly was happy to learn the news, so she invited him to celebrate together tonight. But first, Carl went to his favorite bar where his friends were waiting for him. He was warmly welcomed by Neil, who immediately complained when he found out that his curfew had arrived, meaning he had to go home immediately. Then Dupri approaches him and toasts his marriage and promotion. But behind his excitement, it turns out he is at the worst point in his life. He admitted that he had been fired from his job because he took time off to attend his wedding, and now he was experiencing financial difficulties. He lost his apartment, his car, even his girlfriend left him. He was completely messed up. But fortunately, Dave the bar owner allowed him to sleep at the bar after work hours. Carl feels responsible about him, so he invites him to stay at his house while he looks for a new job. Initially, Dupri refused Carl's offer until Dave told him that some customers were jealous of the policies he gave Dupri. Dave got rid of him. Carl then asked his wife's permission to let his friend stay with them for a few days. He explains all the problems Dupri is facing, putting Molly in a bind. She agrees. Immediately, they invited Dupri into the house and gave him the couch in their living room as a bed. Dupri greatly appreciates Molly's kindness and promises that this is not a permanent situation, also telling them not to hold back as a newly married couple. He will cover his ears. The next morning, the clock showed 6:30 as the couple was leaving for work. They found Dupri sleeping naked. They realized this is not good for their lives. A few hours later, Dupri was seen busy looking for job vacancies in the newspaper while enjoying his breakfast. At the same time, Mr. Thompson and Carl were checking out their project site in Mesa Vista, where they were debating changing the name of the project. But Dupri suddenly called Carl, asking where the plunger was. The toilet was clogged, making it difficult for him to hold back the water that wouldn't drain. Okay, forget that. Carl returned to the boss to continue their conversation. Speaking of names, Mr. Thompson asked Carl to let Molly keep her last name so that his name would live on. There were a lot of people with the name Thompson around town, but the father-in-law didn't care. He suggested him to follow a certain Asian culture where the husband uses the wife's name. However, he refused firmly, and the boss understood why and left. Carl then went home where he found Dupri playing baseball with the neighborhood kids on the street in front of his house. He loses the match, so he invites Carl to join, but he refuses after having a rough day. Dupri returns to the game, encouraging Toshi to throw the ball closer. Molly greets Carl with a warm kiss and tells him that she invited him to make a presentation at the school's Career Day program. The boys fight after Dougie misses the ball, but Dupri just witnesses their fight. When Molly turns on the answering machine, the couple finds it weird. Dupri's voice is heard welcoming the employment news and telling the caller to press button 2 for Carl and Molly. Molly is upset to learn this, but then Dupri explains everything, then sits down and turns on the TV. To Molly's surprise, it turned out that Dupri had also upgraded their streaming platform without the landlord's approval, making Molly even more disgusted with him. Carl tries to reprimand him, but Dupri is just an innocent grown man, so that's what he does. That night, Molly begins to complain about Dupri's presence, but Carl assures her that he will soon adapt to their rules. While the couple was engaging in romance, the innocent Dupri entered their room and disrupted everything. He wanted to borrow the toilet. The next morning, Molly screamed in fear after finding someone's garbage in the toilet. Carl was helpless in this situation. Dupri then prepares breakfast as an apology and informs the couple that he has a job interview that day. In interviews, he describes himself as a friendly person, adamant in enjoying life, not a hard worker, as he works to live. After a while, he realized that this job didn't suit him, so he left. He returned to playing with the kids while teaching them to skateboard on the skate ramp. Carl left the house because he was attracted by their excitement. Dupri shares his idea, asking Carl to put on a little show for the kids, and he agrees. Then they got into position with Dupri handing off the signal to Carl. A worried Molly came over to them, but Carl assured her that he could do it. Once they drop in, Carl falls, then gets hit by Dupri's return slide, which also causes his fall. Molly immediately tends to Carl's wounds and finds out that the last time the two of them skateboarded was years ago. The next day at the office, Carl receives the scale models and finds out that the number of units has been increased. He immediately complained to his boss about this, but Mr. Thompson asked him to stop resisting if he wanted to receive some of the profits from their project. When he returned home, he heard the sound of the TV in his house so loud it could be heard outside. He immediately checked and found Neil engrossed in watching football with Dupri. Carl angrily asks Neil to watch at his own house, but Dupri managed to calm him down, asking him to take advantage of the situation while Molly wasn't at home. Moments later, Carl begins to enjoy his time with them, inviting some of his neighbors to join them. They shared the excitement together until Molly came to calm the situation. They immediately dispersed. Molly is annoyed to see her grandmother's silver cheese plate being used to serve nachos, but Carl reminds her that nachos have cheese in them. Just as Dupri is about to clean up, the bell rings, revealing that two entertainers have just arrived, but Molly immediately throws them out anyway. The next day at school, Carl brings Molly a gift as an apology. They continued with lunch while discussing Dupri's presence in their house, again. Molly claimed Carl's promise that Dupri would only stay for a few days, but that wasn't the case. She reminds him that now is the time to focus on his own responsibilities. Then she reveals her idea to set Dupri up with the school's new librarian. Carl was actually unsure about this idea, so he didn't expect too much. It turns out Dupri agrees. The woman's name is Mandy, who will meet him tonight. When it was dark, the couple who had just returned home heard loud music from outside and saw a tie hanging on the door. They suspect that Dupri is dating Mandy. They are curious. As Molly checks inside, she is shocked to witness Dupri's affection with Mandy, so she goes back outside. A moment later, Dupri also came out to give Molly an explanation and thank her as well. But since he wasn't dressed, Carl told him to go back inside before the neighbors accused them of doing weird things. Suddenly, fire was seen burning in their living room, making them panic and immediately call the fire department. Carl's favorite couch burns down, all the neighbors watch them, while Dupri comforts Mandy before sending her away. She wasn't injured at all, and Dupri considered it a miracle. Carl understands that Dupri is just trying to make a special night with Mandy, but this is too much. So tonight he said it, Dupri must immediately continue his journey. The next day, Dupri excused himself to leave after apologizing for what happened last night. He intended to stay at Mandy's house because he felt something special about her. Molly invites Carl to go out to dinner instead of just looking at the fire area. They sing and laugh in the car until Carl is surprised to see Dupri sitting on a park bench in the rain, alone. He is distraught because his plans regarding Mandy are not going as he hoped. Carl thinks about leaving him, but Molly decides to take him back to their house. They immediately toweled him off as Dupri promised no more open flames. He was given a room. Carl reminds Dupri that he has to put his life back together because they are adults now. If he wanted to stay in his house, then he had to obey all his rules from now on, and he agreed. Besides, he asked Dupri to make him some thank you notes for him. The next day, Dupri started to clean up the burnt area. He repaired everything and began to actively live a healthy lifestyle. As Carl requested, he also wrote several thank you notes for the couple's relatives. One day, Carl asked him to replace his presence at school in order to give a career day presentation to the students. He did well, after which he asked Molly to meet him with Mandy. Unfortunately, Molly couldn't do it, and revealed that Mandy was the woman who slept with half the male teachers at the school. Dupri was clearly disappointed. He walked home with lost spirits while pushing his beloved bicycle. Poor Dupri. He can hardly believe that the last woman he dated was the worst. Meanwhile, at the office, Mr. Thompson urges Carl to resolve the zoning issue considering he is going to the bank soon. He advises Carl to have a vasectomy after learning that he plans to have a kid with Molly. It was just a crazy suggestion coming from the father-in-law. At home, Molly approached Dupri, who was watching his favorite movie. He admired the actor who had all the beauty that not everyone had. Finally, they watched together while talking about Carl, who Molly thought was a little closed off lately. Dupri gives her advice not to give up on him by continuing to try to understand him. I'm sure the results will be worth it. A few hours later, Carl came home with all the tiredness in his head. He tells Molly that her father hated him and attempted to systematically castrate him for the same reason. Mr. Thompson would invite the person he liked to go fishing, but that wasn't the case with Carl. However, Molly didn't think so. She understood that her father was sometimes too harsh with people when he wanted results, but that couldn't be called hate. Molly thinks Carl is just stressed from work, so she invites him to have fun and let Dupri cook for them, and then they share a kiss. Before going to bed, Carl visits Dupri in his room. He wondered how he would react when someone asked him to have a vasectomy. Obviously, Dupri was angry. It was a brutal decision that not everyone can make. But Carl, he had no emotional reaction. The next night, Molly and Dupri started cooking various foods as they had previously agreed. In 20 minutes, Carl will be home, so they have to finish everything quickly. But unfortunately, Carl comes home late as usual, and he sees Molly sharing a laugh with Dupri. When he enters the house, everyone gets angry with him, and Dupri leaves the dining table. Carl and Molly get into an argument by blaming each other. Plus, Molly was disappointed to find out that he would rather have Dupri write a thank you note than his wife. Molly just wants Carl to spend time with her and do fun things at home like a real married couple. In his defense, Carl said that he was under great work pressure, unlike Dupri, who was unemployed. The next day, Carl started jogging to lose weight, while accompanied by Dupri, who continued to ride his bicycle. They discussed last night's problems, which resulted in Carl starting to hate seeing Dupri getting too close to Molly. Carl insists that Dupri is not that lovable. The next day, it turns out that Molly and Dupri remain close, as if teaching Carl how to be a good couples. How could Carl not be jealous? But surprisingly, he didn't give them a reaction. When night falls, Dupri, who misses Mandy, secretly tries to contact her, but to no avail. The woman no longer wanted to talk to him. While Carl and Molly fall asleep, Dupri indulges his passion while watching Carl's collection of Asian adult movies. As Molly came down from her room, she screamed in fear seeing Dupri's activities. Carl immediately went down to check, and he saw the same situation. He scolds him, but then he becomes suspicious of Molly, asking what she is doing at bedtime. An annoyed Molly gets Carl's suspicions, admitting that she couldn't sleep until she is now angry after finding Carl's film collection. The couple got into another fight because Molly never knew that Carl had those movies. When Carl was throwing away the pile of VHS, Dupri approached him. Carl gets to the point, accusing him that he is in love with Molly. He asked Dupri to leave his house and return the groomsman's outfit that he gave to his best man. Carl hates the current Dupri. The next day, the couple began to live without anyone else in their house. Carl believes this is the best decision. If he doesn't do it, Dupri will forever be out of their lives. That evening, Molly invites her father to have dinner with them. While Carl is chatting with his father-in-law, Neil calls him, asking if he really threw away the collection of Asian adult films. He intended to take it. At the same time, Dupri sneaked back into the house to get his stuff. Mr. Thompson advised Carl to hand over the project to a colleague. Of course, Carl got annoyed, so he went into the kitchen to grumble. When Molly comes to him, they fight again and Carl tells her that her father is crazy for asking him to have a vasectomy. Suddenly, Dupri falls from the roof, prompting the family to check out of the house. Carl told Molly to take him out to the side of the road, but Molly felt sorry for him, so she again took him into the house and treated him like her own husband. The atmosphere became very awkward because everyone was upset, until Mr. Thompson started a conversation with Dupri. Neil calls Carl to ask where in the bin he threw the VHS. However, Carl doesn't like someone sneaking around on his property, so he kicks him out. Carl returned to the dining table with the same atmosphere. Then Mr. Thompson expressed his idea, inviting Dupri to go fishing with him. Dupri admits that he is not a great angler, but he had an extraordinary experience fishing for marlin, which took him 4 days. In the middle of their conversation, Carl, who is overcome by jealousy, begins to think that Dupri is trying to take his family. He imagines Mr. Thompson taking Dupri sailing and Molly betraying him for Dupri. At that moment, Carl's anger peaked and he couldn't hold it in any longer. He completely ruins everything, choking Dupri while cursing him. After the father-in-law managed to separate them, Carl dared him to hit him. He got what he asked for. Carl then went to meet Neil at his house and asked permission to stay overnight. Unfortunately, his wife just got a call from Molly, who told her that Carl was trying to kill Dupri, so she asked Neil to send him away. Dupri was given treatment at the hospital but had no serious injuries. Molly asks her father, "Do you want my marriage to really work?" But the father couldn't give her a clear answer, so she took Dupri home and left her father alone. The next day, Dupri woke up early to see Molly washing dishes alone in the kitchen. Carl hasn't come home since last night. Dupri feels guilty seeing Molly sad, so he is determined to bring Carl home. He enlists the kids' help in looking for him, with the motto, "Call someone if you find him." They spread throughout the town carrying posters of his face and asking people about him. Because he was tired, Dupri decided to go to the bar and immediately noticed that Carl was there drinking a bottle of liquor. He immediately approached him, telling him that his accusations about Dupri were a misunderstanding and that he wasn't the only person his father-in-law hated. Then Dupri deliberately blamed Molly for the whole mess to get Carl's fighting spirit to rise, and he succeeded. Carl is now ready to fight to defend his family. Wait, what? Isn't that what he did from the start? Carl then asks Dupri to take him to his office because he has someone to beat. While Dupri distracted the security guard, Carl snuck in until he reached Mr. Thompson's meeting room. He tells the boss that all his efforts to tarnish his reputation with Molly may be working, but he emphasized one thing: he didn't care, because all he cared about is his wife. So if her father prevents him from winning her back, he vows not to back down even if he has to face him. Mr. Thompson admits he did all that because he loved Molly too, but now he realizes he was too hard on his son-in-law, so he apologizes. Dupri will fall from the ceiling. The two friends then went home, and Carl immediately met Molly. He apologizes to her and promises never to run away from her again, and Molly forgives him. Everyone cheered happily to see them together again, especially Dupri, who successfully completed his mission. At the end of the scene, we see Dupri's new phase of life. He is now an author who has just launched his gem of a book, which is a success. The movie ends here. Share your thoughts about this movie in the comments so we can discuss about it. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for watching.